grandmother. I remember you telling me this story.
Everyone always says the same thing. My mother was a complicated person. Mine really was. She was a single black mom of 4, separated from her husband with few money-earning skills despite some amazing talents. Perhaps one of her childhood dreams came true, the marriage part. And like I said, she was separated and on her way to being divorced. All her other dreams died on the vine, including some of the ones for her children. Her eldest child, my brother, was murdered when I was 18 and he 27, and it broke her. But this isn't that story. This is a story about how long after she died, I got a piece of my mother back. My mother was funny, sassy, warm, and stern. She had a magnetic personality and people circled around her like she was a rock star or somebody famous. She wasn't any of those things. Instead, she was amazing at being present and blooming where she was planted. We were poor growing up, and my mother instilled in all of my siblings and I the value of a pivot. Oh, 4 more mouths to feed for dinner than planned for? No problem. Oh, you need a cake whipped up in a pinch and folks will think it was paid for? She got you. Need a soft place to land at the end of a hard day? A place located somewhere on her ample bosoms and grows quite wet with tears as she rocks you? Done. And every kid believes their relationship to their mother was special, but ours really was. I don't know much about my birth, but I do know that her heart stopped for a brief moment in delivery. They were able to resuscitate her quickly, but I like to think that in the intervening heartbeats, that she and I were relying on the same oxygen source in the umbilical cord, literally breathing the same breath. So it is little wonder that she was my everything, not just my sun or my moon, but my galaxy. And she was beautiful. Not just in my eyes, but she had a bevy of boyfriends, some that stayed long enough that we had to find another name for them. Insert eye roll here. And in truth, my mother was different whenever there were specimens of the male gender around. Almost like she was at a 7 normally, which was great. But if there was a man around, she would be at a 9. And I was jealous. However, I have come to understand that in some instances, having a male friend is a hell of a lot more fun than playing games with your kid. There was a year in school when I walked home for lunch in elementary every day. And those lunches with my mom, where she would make me a pint-sized version of her coffee with tons of milk and enough sugar that it tasted like candy. And she would tell me about her day and ask me about mine and what we were learning in school. We made up whole worlds over the table in the kitchen. I hated when she started working for the insurance company in the city. I mean, I was happy for her sense of self and making enough money to support us without being subsidized, but I missed having her to play with. And she could see possibility in impossible places. Add beauty to any scene with a flourish of this or that, and she could claim you and make you feel like nobody's business. Light could pass through her and into you. And there was a moment in my childhood that confused me because it seemed like an outlier to how my mom was. A moment that I've only spoke of a few times because it still makes me feel vulnerable. TV sitcoms like The Brady Bunch and The Partridge Family loomed large in my world as a kid and provided a sense of a moral code and ethics within its wholesome family style. I remember how the whole family, including Alice, would respond with support whenever any of the kids did something good, like be in a play or win an essay contest. And I believed those worlds. And I wanted Alice to bake me cookies as a snack when I came home from school, before I did my homework. And based on these television shows, I knew exactly what would happen when I went to bed after opening night of the play Oliver. I played the part of Nancy in 8th grade. It was the first time I'd ever done anything like that, and with the level of disinterest at home, it felt like I was doing it in secret. And then opening night. The play was going as well as a middle school production with a ton of kids and moving parts can be expected to. I took the stage alone to sing my solo in front of the curtain, so not even background scenery was there to support me. And I sang. I sang better than I ever had at rehearsal. I sang like nobody was watching. My voice soared and floated with power and grace. It hung in the air and on the last note, and then it was over. And then it was dead silent. The song and the piano notes that accompanied it were gone from the air. Moments of horrible self-doubt came rushing in as I tried to find the opening in the middle of the curtain, to flee the scene before the tears that were forming could fall. So when I heard it, that first crack that sounded like a shot in the silence and it felt like a hard clap to my back, the second clap spun me around. And then there was the sounds of feet dragging and chairs scraping. The shots were people clapping and then rising to their feet. A standing ovation. And my mama standing there with them. And I could hear her clearly over the din saying, "That's my baby." So I knew how it was going to go when I got home from celebrating with the cast afterwards. I would come home, brush my teeth, wash my face. I hopped under the covers and even took a moment to stage the top sheet and the blanket to be their most attractive, and waited. Waited for my Brady Bunch, "I am so proud of you" speech. My mother came into my room shortly thereafter like she was supposed to. She sat down on the side of the bed right on point, and then she said, "Do you know how many hard-ons you had out there in that audience?" Me. Stunned silence. My mom further gushing, "Who knew you could sing like that?" Her caressing my face and kissing me. I hugged her back in confusion, and she turned out the light and left. I stayed awake for a long time trying to force my mother's words into my fantasy, but they just wouldn't fit. And disappointed, I went to bed. That moment haunted me. Not in a hugely dramatic way, but it was there. And I felt weird and ashamed about it. And I talk about my mom a lot, especially since she died. But there was a big hole in my memory around that fateful talk. Recently, and I'm 55, now 56, I shared this story with a couple of friends emboldened by alcohol. I relayed the story with unvarnished truth, and one friend gasped when I got to the definitive moment. The other frowned in concentration. When I went on to communicate that this was the moment that I've never understood and been fully able to accept about my mom, my other friend said that she thought it made perfect sense. I looked at her like she had two heads. "What do you mean?" I said. How does that make sense?" And she said, "From what you've shared about your mom, men in power were important, attractive to her." I nodded. True. So that she used the strongest symbol of power was like she was saying to you, you had everyone in the palm of your hands. Like you had that power because of your talent. "Makes perfect sense to me," she said. And within moments, after checking if this resonated to me as truth, and it did, I had an experience that I haven't had since 8th grade. The experience of knowing, understanding, and loving my mom with my whole heart. Gone was this as a moment of not my mom behavior. My friend had helped me see that this actually was part of who my mom was and part of her love for me. And tears of gratitude immediately began to fall.
Just keep it rolling, Daddy. Mommy, what you gonna tell a story about?